Hey guys, Anjanette Russell here. I did not envision this being our last lecture via YouTube when this class started, but this is where we are. I hope everyone is staying healthy and being safe and everything. So we are going to get started with chapter 12 about childcare. I could talk for hours on this subject, considering I worked in childcare for many years now. I actually got my first job teaching at a Kids Are Kids in Tucker, Georgia, when I was right at 16 years old. It's hard to believe that they trusted me with caring for children. I had no idea what I was doing. I was self-taught on how to change a diaper, how to do the whole wiping situation. Yeah, it was really crazy and scary. Back then, they had the technology to where the parents were able to watch us via the internet. And I remember I was working during the holiday season at wintertime, and the phone rings, and I was in the classroom. It was myself and another teacher. She was back in the bathroom changing diapers. And the phone rings and I pick it up, and it was a parent, and she was like, "Hey, I just want to let you know, I think my son has pooped because he's been in the corner for 30 minutes just standing there." And I was like, oh, she was watching. Oh man. The class was really crazy. There were a lot of children. The ratio to child to teacher ratio was really high. So I was just like, oh man, this is really intense. I then, after coming to UGA to do my undergrad, I worked in another child care facility in Athens, and it was really nice. The teachers were super friendly, but the way the building was set up, it was like one huge room, and then there were cubbies that divided the classrooms, but it was still open. So like if you were sitting down at the table, you couldn't see other classrooms, but if you stood up, you're like, oh, hey, there's another classroom. How you doing? So that was really crazy, and I worked there for about a year, and then unfortunately they closed down just due to budgeting and financial situations, and I then got a job at another child care facility in Athens, and I ended up working there for right at a year and a half, and I was fortunate enough to do my internship there, and the teachers there were wonderful and amazing. And it ended up that I ended up taking Rochelle there for a very short time when she was born. So that was kind of crazy and exciting. I'll talk a little bit about that. Let's talk about maternity leave. I know you guys read the position paper about that. To me, I think it's fascinating how there's such a lack of maternity leave and paid maternity leave in the United States. We definitely have a lot of catching up to do as far as other countries go and how they handle maternity leave and paternity leave and all that type of stuff. So I loved reading your responses from the position paper, so thank you for that. And I just want to talk a little bit about my experience with working at UGA with my maternity leave and everything. So the thing with working for the University of Georgia is you accrue leave time from the day you start working, and depending on how long you've worked there depends on how much annual leave you earn. So from when you first start working until 5 years, you accrue 10 hours of annual leave a month. And in addition to that, you accrue 8 hours of sick leave a month. So it's a pretty good amount. And then after working at the university for 5 years, so from 5 to 10 years, you accrue 12 hours of annual leave a month, and the sick leave stays the same. So it's always 8 hours a month. And then after you worked at the university for more than 10 years, you accrue 14 hours of annual leave a month. So the longer you're there, the more hours you accrue, which is really nice. And there's a lot of places where they don't get any sick leave at all. I know my husband's work, he gets 0 sick leave. So if he's sick and he's able to go to work, he'll go to work if he doesn't have a fever or vomiting or diarrhea or anything like that. If he has a tummy ache, he'll go to work. If he has a headache, he'll go to work, because he's like, I don't get paid to sit at home. So I think after this whole COVID-19 situation, it'll be interesting to see how companies respond to that. Because I know there's a lot of companies and corporations that don't provide their employees with sick leave, which I think is crazy. Even though they do get paid more than other people. So I worked at UGA for more than 5 years, so I was accruing the 12 hours of leave a month, and I had to save up all of my leave so that I could go on maternity leave. And I'd really struggled with the whole, should I take 6 weeks? Should I take 8 weeks? What should I do? And I finally talked to this other teacher who is currently Jacob's teacher at the CDL. And she said, you need to take as much time as you can. If you have 12 weeks of leave, take all 12 weeks. And I'm like, I don't, I have right at like 9 weeks, And she was like, well, take all 9 weeks. And I was like, oh, okay. So I ended up taking 8 weeks of maternity leave with Rochelle that was paid, which was very fortunate. We were very lucky to have that. And once I went back to work, my mom was very helpful, and she said, hey, I'll watch Rochelle for 2 weeks while you transition from this working, going back to work. I'll watch her. So that worked out beautifully. So we left our house in Social Circle. We drove to her house in Monroe, dropped off Rochelle every morning, and then drove to Athens, worked all day, and then went back to Monroe, picked Rochelle up, and then came back home, and then cooked dinner and all that stuff. So it was crazy. It was definitely like rush, trying to get things done. But I was so thankful to have my mom to be able to do that. And then after 2 weeks, my mom was exhausted. She was like, oh, I can't do this anymore. What are we going to do? I said, okay, Mom, we'll put her in childcare. Luckily at that time, the place that I'd worked at before had an opening. I did the whole tour of the childcare center. I felt very fortunate in the fact that I knew a lot of the teachers that worked there still. So I was like, yay, they'll take care of my baby, My biggest recommendation for anyone who thinks about putting their child in childcare at some point, when you do have children, is I would go and I would observe, and I would come unannounced. I wouldn't tell them I'm coming. I would just say, hey, I'm here. Let me see what your center has to offer. And if they don't want to give you a tour at that point, I would be a little hesitant, like, are they trying to hide something? What's going on? So yes, go unannounced, make surprise visits, see what they've got going on. I was very fortunate. Like I said, I knew a lot of the teachers that worked there. They took great care of my daughter. I'm not going to lie. When I left her the first day, I cried. Like, I went into my car after dropping her off at school, and I cried. I was like, oh no, she's my baby. I knew she was in great hands. But I can't imagine the emotions that people feel that have never worked in the child care industry or facility, and they don't know what's going on. They don't know what to expect, I ended up working about 6 hours that day, and our numbers were low at the Child Development Lab, and I'm like, I'm going to go pick her up. Like, I'm going to go see how she's doing. I remember I walked in, and they're like, oh, she didn't take a nap today. And I'm like, what? What do you mean she didn't take a nap today? And they're like, oh, yeah, she's just been hanging out and playing, and she never really looked sleepy, so we didn't put her in her bed. And I'm like, you should have put her down for a nap, because babies need their sleep, like, what's going on? So we had to have a little bit of conversations about, after she gets a bottle, please feel free to put her in her crib. She will eventually fall asleep, So she was there for right at 2 months. And then the way the CDL works is that we had 2 weeks off. So my mom actually took her back and watched her again. So she was able to watch her for another 2 weeks. Before Rochelle came to the CDL, and she came to the CDL right at 5 months old. And she's been there her whole time until she went to pre-K at East Jackson Elementary. So that was crazy and exciting all at the same time. Childcare, super expensive. I know when we were doing the numbers, I vividly remember I talked to Josh multiple times about childcare is expensive. That's why we're going to wait to have children. It's expensive. We don't have enough money. It's expensive. La, 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 la. And this was when we lived in Social Circle, and we would carpool to work, and I told him how much tuition was at the CDL in the infant class, and it was right at, $900 a month, and he was like, what? You've got to be kidding me, and he literally almost wrecked our car because he was just blown away. I'm like, I've been telling you this is not new information. So yeah, there's a lot of families that I know of where the mom you know, ends up having the baby, and she's like, okay, if I went back to work and we had to pay for childcare and the fuel and transportation and wear and tear on my car for going back to work and, you know, transporting to childcare and everything, she goes, I literally at the end of the week would make $50. It's not worth it. You know, it's not worth it. And once again, I love my job. I love what I do. It's amazing. But one of the perks is, you know, I get great benefits. I'm not going to lie. The benefits are fantastic. And that's definitely a key as to what my motivation was to go back to work, because I don't make a lot of money, you know, and I was like, I like benefits. Benefits are nice. I like paid vacations. Yeah, let's do it. So yeah, I definitely understand, you know, the families that crunch the numbers and they're like, why doesn't the mom just stay at home? Especially if you have more than one child that you're trying to pay for childcare with. So I think that's really interesting. So with Jacob, it ended up that, you know, I had him in September. Well, the deal with the CDL is your child has to be born before August 31st to be in the infant room. So I was like, oh, okay, what are we going to do? He didn't make the August 31st cutoff date. And I knew this when we got pregnant. I was like, oh, shucks, what are we going to do? You know? So luckily I reached out to some other families at the CDL, and this one mom was like, hey, I'm going to get a nanny. She's going to come to my house. It's going to start in January. I'm like, that's amazing, because with Jacob, luckily I'd saved up right at 3.5 months of sick and annual leave. So with him, I was off for 3.5 months, whereas Rochelle, it was right at 2 months. And that 3.5 months was amazing. Like, it was phenomenal. It was fall time. We would go for walks every day. We lived out here outside of Athens. It was super nice. So going to pick up Rochelle from school was not a big issue. It was amazing. And then January, he went and stayed with this other little boy that was born in November. And there were 3 little boys in this little group, another little boy that the mom had known as well. And so, and that little boy I think was born in July. So Jacob was in the middle of the 3 little boys as far as birth date goes. And it was wonderful. The nanny came. She was there every day. She was there all day long. We paid her. Things were wonderful. And then luckily they had an opening in the McFall CDL infant classroom, and he was able to get into there. So I was like, yes, we're golden, you know, 2 children in one place. That's amazing. It was fantastic. It was really, really amazing. I have more things I'm going to talk about. Let me look on my cheat sheet. Sorry. Yeah, I think that's it. We're good. Okay. So yeah, there's a lot to think about when thinking about mom staying at home, dad staying at home, grandparents watching children. There is a little girl that is in my class. My phone is sliding, sorry. And she actually was watched by her grandfather before coming to the young toddler classroom. So she was born in July. So from July all the way to the next August, she was watched by her grandfather. And she had a really hard time transitioning to a group setting of 15 other children. They're all loud, they're all rowdy, we're rambunctious, when she was used to that one-on-one interaction with her grandfather. And so it is difficult for children that come in from that, you know, family member or in-home daycare situation where there's, you know, a caregiver and 1 or 2 or 3 other children, you know. But they all transition very nicely. I mean, I've seen children cry for a day. I've seen children cry for 3 days. I've seen children cry for 3 weeks. I've seen children cry for 3 months. They will eventually get it. They're like, hey, this isn't so bad after all. Hey, they feed me. Hey, I like this. I'm digging it. So yeah, just stick with it. Your children will be okay when you go on and have children. So for the discussion question topic for today, I want you to go and just tell me one thing that you enjoyed about this semester, whether it was the guest speakers, whether it was reading the wonderful textbook, whether it was the field trip to St. Mary's. Just write 3 sentences what you liked the most about this class. And then hopefully I will get to teach this class again. Fingers crossed, maybe, if I was good instructor. I don't know, maybe not. So do that, please, for your discussion. So we are actually going to have a guest speaker, and I feel for her because right now she's in the process of moving during this whole COVID-19 situation. And she sent me a message the other day, and she was like, can you please extend my deadline for when I needed to send you my interview questions, you know? And I'm like, yes, that's fine. I totally understand. So what she says, none of that will be on the final or anything. I just would love for you guys to hear what she has to say. She's got an incredible story. She's an amazing parent from the CDL, and I just can't wait for you guys to hear her story. Thank you to each and every one of you for allowing me to be a part of your final semester here at UGA. If you are graduating, if you are not graduating, and maybe I'll see you around campus, you know, in the fall when we're done social distancing. Yeah, I really, really thoroughly enjoyed my time with you guys. It's been hard, I'm not gonna lie, it's been intense, but I wouldn't change anything about it. I've loved every minute of it. I hope you guys have enjoyed this semester as much as I have. So yeah, please take care, and we'll see you soon. Okay, thanks so much. Bye.